Some viewers may find this content disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Lilith, I've been waiting for you, my friend. This, yes, means once again, it is time for Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. Yet, I am so hungry, please allow me to feed.
No worries. This shall not take very long.
Much better. I did need to replenish myself before Lilith and I head out into the darkness to track the infamous Dogman. Do not fear, because in the shadows is when you unlock your true powers and potential. My creatures of the night, yes, welcome back to another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy. Our co-host and guest tonight is the one and only Lilith, aka Deborah Hatswell from BBR Investigations.
Hello everybody, thank you for joining me this week. I have an amazing guest for you. You're going to be really pleased. I've got Kenny Thibodeau from America, and he's talking today about the Dogman subject, but also something that equates to me. I've been trying to collect data for as many years as I can remember, because like yourself, Kenny, you've got a real interest in the subject, and there's a lot of information out there, isn't there, that we don't tend to hear a lot about in the UK, unless you are really, really into the subject. So a lot of our listeners tonight will be from the UK. So if you could tell us where it started for you, Kenny, that would be amazing.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm very glad to, as I said, be on your show, and I appreciate the opportunity, especially being in here in America. I'm actually up in the Northeast. I'm near like Boston and the Canadian line. No, long story short is I used to, when I was in high school, sneak down to the library when I was supposed to be doing homework, and I would just find myself reading books and things about Bigfoot and some of the Loch Ness monsters, just some of the more, I guess, well-known cryptids. And I mean, I was like 11 at that point in time. So I really found that to be interesting. Over the past maybe 15 years or so, I feel like the scientific community has really stepped forward into the whole Sasquatch epidemic, and they've been able to really bring credibility to dermal ridges, like fingerprints. Like you've had Jeff Meldrum, who's been able to dictate like the pressure points of when this thing was stepping down. So I feel like it's got a lot of credibility now, where someone such as myself, I'm just a graphics designer and videographer, a journalist. So when it comes to scientific stuff, unfortunately, the community in that realm doesn't really care what I have to say. So it's super important to try to get someone like some of those scientific people just to sit down and try to at least, I cannot 100% say whether or not a Dogman is real. I'm very subjective and objective. I consider myself to be scientific and intellectual, so I try to look at three sides to the story. I do believe people are definitely seeing something. That is 100% sure, but as I said, I can't verify what it is that they're seeing. I personally have never seen any of these, and I have never been in a situation to have an interaction. But I do think as a journalist and a researcher, it's just really my goal to document, just try to put everything together in simple formats so that people are easily able to access it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've seen it from the other point of view. I've been doing this for 40 years now. So 30 years ago, I don't think they'd have even heard of Bigfoot in the UK. It just wasn't.
Yeah, yes. Yep.
Loch Ness Monster, yeah, we knew about that. But nothing really of the two-legged variety, to be honest. So, like yourself, I just hit the library when I was a teenager and just tried to find a hominid or something along the hominid line that would account for what I saw. But over the years, as I've researched, I realised that there are people out there collecting data, very scientific data. There's a lot of work gone into it, but only with the Bigfoot subject.
Yes.
Now, the Dogman is a whole subject to get, and just like yourself, I don't know what they are, Kenny. I only speak to the witnesses. I haven't seen them myself.
Exactly.
But we should be investigating those cases in the same way as we do Bigfoot. We should be looking for hair samples.
Yes.
You know, things that can take us forward in the community, because there are probably, I can't think of anybody, any scientific individual or body that's actually done any work into the Dogman subject.
Yes, 100%. So that's really why I've tried to just reach out to people such as yourself, and I'm just trying to get like a good core of individuals around me that we can bounce stuff back and forth and try to debunk things. I have a whole folder. It's like 192 pictures right now that I haven't been able to debunk, or the people that I'm working with.
Mm-hmm.
We also do have a fakes album where Jody Cook, who is one of my right-hand men, and I'm one of his, he actually runs the North American Dogman Project. And then my friend Shane Michael Crisp, and then Ryan Tremblay. People like that I'm able to reach out to, which is excellent. My friend Nuxium, so he's a master tracker. So I can send these things out, and we kind of filter through to try to figure out. Obviously, you know, we all get bamboozled. There probably is a couple pictures in the evidence file right now that are not real. I have yet to be debunked, but that's the point of it. Yeah, I definitely would love to share all that stuff with you. And if you do ever have witnesses that also speak outside of your show, I, at the moment, have 3 eyewitness testimonies where they were able to send me their story in a voicemail. And what I did is I put it together into a visual aspect. I'll actually send that to you as well.
Yeah.
And just be able to tell their stories. It's super, super important. And as you said, just making sure that, man, I have so many footprints and things like that. But the problem is, I'm not a master tracker. So when I see these sometimes, I'm like, well, that's a large print. I send it to my buddy and he's like, see how there's no claws there? That most likely is a large cat because the cat's claws retract.
Yeah.
And then someone else sends me a big print. I'm like, well, this looks canine. I send it to my buddy. He's like, yeah, that's actually a coyote. And they enlarged the print. And then he shows me the original print. So I'm like, okay. And it's fine. That's the goal as to what we're supposed to be doing anyhow, is kind of filtering through that. But it's just unfortunate when you would like to present yourself with credible stuff and then you send somebody something, they're like, oh, well, that's actually been debunked. And that's kind of the job that we should be doing.
Yeah, you just have to kind of, like, as we say in England, just take it with a bit of sugar. It's going to happen. So
yes.
I'm the same. I get sent all kinds of. You'd be amazed how many pictures of poo that I actually get sent quite often, all of the time. And I remember an old story from many years ago. Peter Byrne was a very famous cryptozoologist. Him and his backer paid quite a lot of money back in the day, about £4,000, to stake out this area because they decided that it was an actual Sasquatch toilet outhouse, whatever you want to call it. So they did that. They staked it out for about 12 months. And one day, this little tracker, a meshish Canadian tracker, comes walking down with his horse, goes up to the tree, does what he needs to do, and off he goes again. So they'd watched that tree for 12 months. And it was just this guy going about his seasonal route, you know, as he did. So there are always going to be situations like that, aren't there? And we can laugh about it now, but I bet they weren't.
Yeah. And as you said, it's always, I've touched this story a couple times because it's one of the more eccentric ones I've heard. A friend of mine had somebody he interviewed one time where they said they raised a Dogman as a pet and ended up, and the gentleman's like crying to my friend as he's talking to him. We don't ever call you out, but after the phone call is hung up, we're like, yeah, this one's probably not going in the database just because, you know, that sounds a little bit more off the topic than what I'm trying to present with myself, but it's important, like I said, just to try to get a feel of people.
Yeah.
And I have some friends that are former law enforcement, and I've always found it interesting with how like people like detectives are able to solve stuff. So I've kind of always had like a little bit of that in my mind frame. When you're interviewing someone, I mean, we all have things in our past, so it's not necessarily that. But at the moment, if you were drinking, or do you have, some sort of mental lapse that happened, were you off your medication? Just things that you want to try to in your head. It's not necessarily questions you're asking the individual, but as you're documenting something, you're trying to judge body language, and you should have already done your research a little bit of who the individual is before you give them a platform on your platform, I guess.
It's hard, isn't it? You're walking a really tricky line, because for me, I want to include as much information as I can. But you've got to read, read really deep into it and see, there's certain questions that I'll ask. And like you say, if you know law enforcement, there are certain techniques that they use when they're interviewing, as do FBI behaviouralists. So you can I kind of play off that a little bit.
Yes. Body
so
language and digging over words. And let's give an example. If you and I were out researching, okay, or let's say you and I went to hear hockey and football is a big thing, NFL. Well, I'm a big hockey guy. So say you and I went to a hockey game and my favorite player is playing and they win the Stanley Cup. I'm like, yeah, that's a huge moment. Okay, well, what if you and I are out in the woods and we have an interaction with a grizzly bear, a wolf, a dogman? You're going to remember those type of things. And I just feel like sometimes when people are speaking, they'll just be like, well, it was between 64, 65, or it was late springish. Like I don't know. I feel like they're digging. It should kind of come out. I mean, just flow out. You shouldn't be like, well, when it showed up, it smelled, you should just be able to be like, yeah, it smelled like wet dog blood. It was a very unpredictable odor. Just, you know what I mean? You shouldn't have to dig through your brain to come up with the answer to the question that's presented to you.
Yeah, I don't remember a smell. It's a really honest answer. Somebody once asked me the creature that I saw, what its ears looked like, and I said, I don't remember what its ears look like. I don't know.
And that's totally fine. And that's why it's super important to speak to a witness the sooner something happens, because whether we as humans want to believe it or not, it's a documented thing that as time goes by, we create prefabricated memories. So the general consensus of what happened to you is going to be the same, but your mind's going to plug in a little bit of different stuff that's happened. Yeah. And as time proceeds, more and more stuff's kind of getting plugged in. So if you were able to rewind yourself to that exact instant and then put yourself to the future as to what you're thinking you saw, you're going to be like, okay, there's some differential. So it's super key to talk to people when it's fresh. It's not bad to talk to somebody that had an experience 30 years ago. It's just better to get it as it's fresh.
No, I know what you mean. It would be the same if it was a crime.
So 100%, yes.
Yeah, you still interviewed the witness from 30 years ago, but what you're hoping for is some current information.
Yes.
The last case I worked, and I'm going to send it over to you when we finish speaking, was an 88-year-old man. It happened on the 8th of September this year. And we were able to fortunately for us, this is an area where there's been ongoing activity for about 20 years. And this guy's been documenting it and he's kept it to himself, one of the guys on the property. But this gent's 88 and he's seen something at the window. Unfortunately, we managed to, some people might say it was the wrong thing to do, but he wanted to do it. He wanted to go on camera and tell people what had happened, because while he was still shaping up about it, the best time to get the meat, because
100%.
He remembered that even the fact that the ears were slightly bent over.
Yes, just everything. And that's super important. And also, I do feel like with some of the elder generations, it wasn't really a topic that people would like to speak about back then. So those individuals have way more to lose in regards of credibility in their mind and things like that. So for someone like that to tell you about that interaction, it brings some merit to the topic. And also, it is so important to sit down and, again, I'm not going to call anybody out, but there's just been so many times where people reach out and they claim that they have images, they send it to you, etc. But then you ask, like, hey, can we sit down and talk? They don't want to talk to you, which is cool, but they don't even want to give you their story. And it's hard because we can document your story without the precise location of your house. If you live in Gorham, Maine, I can say you're in Portland, Maine. It's a pretty close differential. We don't need your exact name, but time of day, the location, what county, things like that are super important. And if you're not willing to sit down and give that proper information, it's just a lot of red flags. It just gives you a ton of wiggle room to make up your own stuff because no one else is on your property, etc. So it's super tough because you don't want to invade people's privacy, which is totally understandable. But at the same time, that's kind of the point of being a researcher, is to be able to document that so that if someone is in these locations, like Jody Cook made a map on Google Maps that shows literally every Dogman encounter that has been documented, and you can go through. And so that's what I did, is I went through all these regions that are Dogman territory, and I look at current events, past events where people are going missing in these areas. And when there isn't an explanation as to why they went missing, or witnesses say they saw a bear man or a wolf man carrying somebody off, then, that's what I'm trying to document in regards of that. So it's just imperative to get that, because if not, I can't just go off someone's total word, because you would like to think that human testimony is great, but in actuality, it's really not as credible as we think it is.
I'm about to make your day then, Kenny. I started mapping cryptid accounts in 1982.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I started with a big map on the wall in my bedroom, and I'd find one and I'd stick a pin in it and I'd write everything down.
Yes.
Then I've continuously done that, and I still do it now. And that's turned into a Google map. It's an interactive map that's on Google. I share it.
That's great. Yes,
so
that's so perfect.
Comes in, I just pop it on. I put all the details. If they sent me any photographs, I pop those photographs on. It's so big now, though, that what I've had to kind of direct it through my website, because it only holds so much data, doesn't it?
But it's still it's all there though, still, which is great. So that means you're documenting and you have it. That's excellent.
That's it. And then what I found is there's nobody actually documenting between us. So you've got the Americans, the Canadians, the Russians, and UK. But then you've got all of Europe. No one's kind of documenting that. So I started doing that now.
That's excellent.
I managed to get witnesses from other parts of the world. But that's the whole point. And if I pop my clogs tomorrow, my work's still there. It can still carry on. People can just keep adding to it,
Yes, and that's what I'm doing with the digital book. I mean, at some point it can be printed, but that way I'm able to just consistently update it. Like later tonight, I got maybe a couple more hours of updating stuff in there, and then I need to finish up a video friends podcast that we were working on and stuff like that. But it's key. It's just being digital format now is great. So I mean, I don't need to keep the paper copy. If I want it, I can print that out. I could just bust open Google Documents and everything's like right there, which is totally excellent. But back to what you were saying, you folks over there actually have, I don't know if you ever heard of the Flixton werewolf. That's actually one of the original werewolves, and also the wolf of Thumberland and Allendale, black wolf that was back. I don't want to throw total dates out because I have them documented in my book, but I don't like to throw incorrect dates, but you know what I'm speaking about.
I know. I've worked both of those cases. So
okay, cool. Sweet. All right. But those are some of the smaller ones. And I mean, even I believe it's the Black Mountains and the movie of American Werewolf in London, where the pub is, the Slaughtered Lamb. That's actually based off a real pub that was near the Black Mountains and the moors, where people in that area were reportedly seeing bipedal upright dog creatures. And
do you know where I live?
No.
That's where I live. That's the West Pennine Moors. I live on the west part.
Wow. Okay, cool.
It was on the east. So
is that a true story then, from what I understand? Like, I've been told from a couple different people that was based off the American Werewolf in London thing. But since you're over there, that's great.
We've had reports of werewolves, wolfmen, wolvers, depending on what name you give them, from about the 1st century. But American Werewolf in London was kind of based on RAF Alconbury, which is an RAF base, an American RAF base that was in the centre, more or less the centre of the UK. And you had American soldiers that were reporting seeing what they called the standing wolf. And that went on for 30 years. But on the northeast coast that you mentioned, Flixton, most of the northeast coast, the sightings along that coast are canine in description, normally 2 legs, snout. And it's also an area where most of our military bases are, because when we were at war with Germany, that was the side of our country where we had our installations and batteries and things like that. So there's a lot of talk at the moment about, is there any kind of connection between these dog-headed men and the military bases that they're being seen on? So I think the last report I took from the northeast coast, where you're talking Flixton, would have been last year. 2 ladies out walking dogs. And they were there at the RAF Bempton, this one's called.
Yeah, no, you got a lot of stuff right there. Also, Shetland, Scotland. Recently, someone sent me a pretty creepy vocalization where they're looking out their window. It definitely doesn't sound like a canine that I know, and they're in like a small little village, and it just sounds like a human and like a wolf screaming. It's pretty creepy. So yeah, no, and also I do know from my research that there are 3 different type of dogmen: type 1, type 2, and type 3. So your type 1 is more traditionally what you would see from like the Howling and Van Helsing, your more traditional werewolf, where the color can range a little bit between dark gray, black, and brown, but they have the ears pointed up at the top of their head. Eyes can be amber, orange to red. A couple cases where people have said yellow, but it could have been the reflection from something else. And then you have your type 2 dogman that is similar in regards of being upright, bipedal with like the raccoon type like hands and arms, but it's got a German Shepherd head and German Shepherd coloring. And then your type 3 is the same thing, bipedal, upright, but it's got the look of a hyena. And those ones have the specific eye shine at night that is different from the type 1 and type 2. So people that are a little bit more experienced or a seasoned researcher can kind of pick up on the differentials between the eye shines. My theory on it is, again, I'm just a researcher. I do believe that they are flesh and blood. This is, as I said, my view on it, because there are footprints that are left behind. There's claw marks on people's houses. They've been seen eating. They've been seen drinking water. They've been seen living in dens. They howl. They have caused injury to people. I've actually talked to a couple people that have shot it, and it reacted. It did not like what hit it. A lot of people don't realize that the United States, especially down in like Kentucky and Tennessee, there's a whole entire mountain range and tunnel system that runs underneath that called the Mammoth Cave System. And a lot of researchers think that the dogmen and things like that they just use these to get back and forth, which would make sense with any animal. I mean, any animal is going to use ways to like go back and forth, but there have been a ton of people that have seen dogmen dens that go pretty deep into the ground. And I mean, there's numerous sources of animals that do that. I mean, a fox, for example, might not completely travel under the ground, but it digs its burrow in. It has other entrances. And
animals are smart, so they won't do anything that extends calories without having to. So.
Yes, it's funny you said that, because predators are hypochondriacs, meaning that they're terrified to be injured, because if you are a predator, you are usually solo. Not always. I mean, if you are in a wolf pack, hopefully your other buddies bring you food. But if you are a deer or something and you get injured, you can, lay down and eat some grass and have a better chance of survival. But if you're a wolf or a grizzly bear and you're solo and you busted up your front leg or something, you have a very slimmer chance of survival now. So as you said, that they usually never put themselves in a situation unless they know that they're going to be successful. It's like a great white shark. If you notice, they usually don't ever hit you straight on. It's either from underneath or behind, because they're trying to protect themselves.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, they don't make themselves vulnerable, do the animals? That's not what they do. So
yes,
you're talking about something that's highly intelligent, a master of its own its own environment. It knows how to use light and shade to kind of camouflage itself.
Yes.
Moving at extreme speed. And a lot of people say, I saw it out the corner of my eye.
Well, it's like with anything. I mean, so people too are like, oh, how come you don't get a good picture? All right, so I have a pet squirrel. She comes in and chills with me in here too, but she's outside playing like right now. Okay, if I go to pick my phone up right now, as I see her, she's looking in at me, but is she going to stand there the whole time and like let me get a perfect picture of her? Maybe. It's like the bird outside. Oh, cool. Hey, look at this woodpecker. You pull it up and then it starts to move away. And you're like, dude, this picture looks like crap. And it was from like 6 feet away. And so when people are like, oh, well, what's up with all the blurry photos? And I mean, when you have someone that gets this epic, perfect, like National Geographic photo, you know how long it took that person to sit there and get that epic photo? A lot of people don't understand that when people have these encounters, they're not necessarily out there looking for that. I mean, They could just be out with their family camping and they might have no belief in this whatsoever. Why should we expect them to just have plaster castings to be able to cast this footprint? Why? Yeah, why do we expect them to all of a sudden have laser sensing where they can pick up thermal? It's not like that.
No. But I pushed when it happened to me, Kenny, when I saw something, I didn't think about a camera. I didn't think anything else other than run. And I pushed my friend to the ground.
Yeah.
You know, it primally, no thought into it. But afterwards realised I'd done it so it'd get her and not me. If I'd have had a camera, it wouldn't have mattered. I'd have thrown it and run.
Well, yeah, what are you going to take a selfie with the Dogman? I mean, that's what, 100%. How many times do people, if a tiger's coming at you, I mean, every once in a while you have somebody in the back of the car that had their camera going that catches it, but the guy that's in the front's like, oh boy, like he's just trying to, get at it.
It's not realistic, is it? It's not realistic. I spoke to a guy in Edmonton, Slave Lake, and he saw a Sasquatch and a moose going at it head to head, and he had a rifle. And he hunts for a living. He's a bear guide. And he said he didn't even think about his gun. It never entered his head to rack his... He just went backwards as quietly as he could because primarily his brain told him that was the best action to take.
Yeah,
you know?
Fight or flight. I mean, there's so many war cases about that where people, you traumatized and literally there's bombs blowing up. Everyone's shooting around you. And you're just standing there like not... not processing fully what's occurring to you. And no, it's super true. So that's another thing you say with them being intellectual. There's numerous cases of them like setting traps that I've heard, like leaving dead animals on the road. So where someone will get out and look at it and be like, what the heck? They try door handles, windows. There's actually a really creepy case from the 80s in Germantown, Ohio, where the police came down on a loudspeaker and told everyone, please, you got to step back inside. Some of the wolves from the local natural resource center have escaped, which... okay, I mean, it's an environmental place. These wolves see people all the time. So, I mean, okay, but whatever. So they obeyed the police and went inside. And all throughout the night and up to this point, to this day, people reported hearing strange howling. They had reports of large wolf-like, German Shepherd-like heads looking in their windows with the red eyes, trying their door handles. And this is the 80s where people don't have cell phones. So you might not like necessarily have spoken to the other person on the side of town that day, but yet all you people are seeing and hearing like what has occurred with that. And it's super creepy in regards to that. And I think a lot of people miss the aspect when they're like, well, why aren't there more accounts? There actually are a ton of accounts, but people also need to realize when you have an account with an apex predator, you're very lucky to come out of it on top. People are way more apt to have a chance of survival with a Sasquatch because from all the Native Americans that I've spoke to and that are friends of mine, they obviously are going to push you out of their area, but they're not there to hunt you. They're protectors of the forest. If you are being destructive, cutting down the land, polluting, yeah, sure, you might have a negative interaction. But even with the Ape Canyon, they were trying to push them out of their area, whereas Dogmen 100% are looking at you as an opportunity for dinner, or you're not going to have a very positive reaction. So some of the interactions with the younger children where the Dogman has taken them away, like one of the girls, her name was Ida, and it's an older story that you'll be able to read in my book. When they found her, they asked why she wasn't screaming for help. They actually found her in a strange animal den, and as they approached it, a large bear-like wolf thing bolted out and went running by them. And they asked this little girl, like, why are you in here? Like, what's going on? And she said, Mr. Wolf wouldn't allow me to scream for help. Mr. Wolf was feeding me berries, and Mr. Wolf got mad at me when I said I wanted to go home, and he bit my hat off my head. I have a theory about that. I almost feel like they're like those Dogmen aren't doing that as a way to be nice. They're doing that as a way to, as dark as it sounds, prepare you to consume you.
And Gretel, like, feel your finger and see if he's fattening her up.
That's just my view on it, because all the little kids do say the same thing, that they've been taken and that it feeds them. But it's not being like nice to them. It's almost like, as dark as it sounds, like when you are cooking on Thanksgiving, putting berries or something in your turkey to add flavor. I really feel like that's kind of what's going on with that. But
see, I didn't know. Where can people get the book, Kenny, or should I just give them your email?
So, like I said, it's always going to be being updated, but I will send you a PDF file directly to your Facebook Messenger. So that way you can just open it up and scan through it. And what I'll do is every couple of weeks when I go through and update more stuff, I can just send the updated version your way.
Oh,
And
brilliant.
that way you can look through all that stuff and you can see the things that I've been able to document over here. And also if you are able to add anything to the European side, it's great. And also if any of my research and work is able to help you out as well, then that's kind of the whole point. So
yeah, no, I can do that. That'd be amazing. And like I say, there's a lot of Brits out there with stories to tell. I find that as I put a new account out, then invariably someone will get in touch with me at that point.
that is excellent because that means you built that rapport of people feeling like respectable and being able to present themselves to you. So no, that's amazing. I will definitely 100%. You have my word. You're going to get everything I have. As I said, I'm just trying to. There's a couple people that are waiting on it, but instead of you guys are all busy. Instead of bombarding with message, I just want to present everything so that way you can see all the evidence, you can see the fakes, you can see all the videos I have, you'll have my book. And then obviously as things are updated, then I can send you more things. And I'll even send you a bunch of my art for the Dogman if you want to use it or whatever you'd like to do with that as well. And if you need art or images cleaned up, I do specialize in that. So if you get a print of something and you want it to pop out a little bit more, I'm able to do all that stuff too.
Yeah, that's really kind of you. Is there any cases, because the listeners will want to know, is there any cases that you've worked on that, this is a personal question for me, where you would have liked to have been there like a fly on the wall?
Yeah, actually recently, it's funny you said that. There was a case at the end of August in Bethel, Maine, which is near Sugarloaf. So it's maybe an hour or so away from where I am right now. There was a 15-year-old boy from Massachusetts that was up here with a survivalist group. That's what they specialize in, outdoor survival. They're camping. They're about 30 miles into the woods. Around 3:15 in the morning, the kid gets up to go use the bathroom. And as he gets up, I did speak to the kid, and I also spoke to some of the other members of the group. His parents aren't really about what he said. They think he's making it up kind of, so they grounded him for a while. And actually when I was speaking to them, they're like, oh, you don't believe in this werewolf stuff, do you? And I was like, well, it's not that I necessarily believe in it, I just would like to interact or just hear like what your child has to say. So they were in there too, and I spoke to the kid, so it wasn't necessarily the most fluid conversation, but he got blindsided by something that felt like he was hit by a linebacker, and it was hairy, it smelled like a dog, and he said it looked like a werewolf from a movie, from what he could see from like a fire in the lights as it was carrying him off. And he's screaming for help, and his tribe leader or group leader stepped out from the tent with the other members that were in charge, and they did hear the kid screaming for help as something was clamoring through the forest, and you could hear tree branches breaking, and then the kid's voice just was off in the distance. Well, they were looking for him, couldn't find him, and they called in the Maine game wardens, and I believe it was 15 hours later they found the kid around a mile or so away from his original abduction site, and he was screaming for help, and the game warden and his dog were able to find him. They brought him back, and that's what the kid's story is. And there's actually another camper that had nothing to do with any of this that was up in the area that I happen to know, and he recorded a vocalization of a really strange sounding. I mean, we do have coyotes up here and foxes, and people don't want to admit it, but there are mountain lions up here recently that have been reintroduced, and we do have some gray wolves in northern Maine and stuff. But this was strange. It was pretty quiet, and you could just, I don't know, it sounds super strange. So he sent that to me from the area of where this happened with this kid. The kid had nothing to gain from making it up. I mean, he got grounded from the rest of the summer by his parents. I don't think that was a good flex to get them to be, hey, you're being a good child. Yeah, no, I would have liked to definitely be able to get a little bit more of what went on with that. It sounds pretty interesting. And like I said, he was definitely traumatized about it. And I got to speak to him in a pretty good time frame from when it had originally occurred. So
I think if they can tell that you're actually interested in listening, you get a lot more out of it. I mean, I've interviewed children with the parents, and I've seen the difference. And children, I spoke to a gentleman only a few months ago, and his son saw a shadow being in the bedroom. Now, instead of saying it was just a nightmare, it was this, it was that, he said to him, people do see them, son, don't know what they are, not really sure what they are. But because he believed him, it made it a much less traumatic event.
Yes.
You know, rather than putting it, with me, it was, oh, you're being silly, or you're being dramatic, or it's just a nightmare, just go to sleep. And I was plagued as a kid, me. And I think if I'd have had a different set of parents, I'd have navigated it differently. So I'm all for like, even if you don't believe your child believes what happened to them, and that's enough for me. You know, that I can work.
And that's a great way to look at it. And also, that's funny you say that, because even though a child is a child and they haven't fully developed yet, when you have a 2-year-old that can barely speak, correct? They haven't had a chance really to learn how to lie. They haven't had a chance to prefabricate things. They haven't had a chance to learn what a werewolf is or any of these things. They're just using simplified words that they're able to use. So when they say that a bear man or Mr. Wolf took me, I tend to believe that quite credibly, because this is, as I said, a little child that it doesn't have the capability yet to learn how to lie. And that's their best description as to what took them. So there's not really much wiggle room to have things made up. Whereas if you're 15 or 16, the odds of lying are definitely way more prevalent, you know?
I think I always took child witnesses because I was a child witness, I think.
Yes.
And I still see it now, where the child can be incredibly detailed. They can go back to the area with you, do size comparisons and everything.
Yes.
Then you'll still get, well, they were 15 and they must have been drinking or they must have been on drugs. And I think, well, I didn't. You know, so I was credible enough that you'll listen to the program or read my book. And this kid's in the same position that I'm in. You know, and it's hard for me because nothing's changed in that 40 years. You know, we've come a long way. What I mean is, because it's not an adult, well, we instantly poo-poo it or we instantly dismiss it. I've spoken to people who've had experiences when they were children who've gone on to be very credible adults. So if you believe them in a court of law, I don't understand. I never gained anything, Kenny, from being the kid that saw a monster.
No, of course not. I mean, if anything, you lost stuff about that. I mean, you're going to get like made fun of. That's the huge thing too, as well, is that some of the people that do come forward and you see like what they do have for occupations, and you're not gaining anything off of that. It's super important because for like me, I have a photogenic mind, but again, everything over time, as I said, you plug in different things. But when I do something, whether it's a video or a project, I start painting it out digitally into my mind, and I'm able to see as it's unfolding, and I already have it in my mind how it should look. So then I'm putting it into the video form or into the image, and then trying to translate a story. So like in an image or a video, the goal is to tell a story without not always having to say something. So in an image, you don't have to put a voice to it, but if you do it correctly, that's going to speak volume to the people that view it. So no, it's just super important with all that. Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's what we'll do then. I'm going to ask all of my listeners to reach out and get in touch with you. Me and you will backwards and forwards together, won't we? I'm sure we'll collab again at some point.
No, we definitely will. I mean, you're invited to my group and stuff, and I have you as a Facebook friend, and I'm definitely going to be sending you, all my stuff. And when new stuff comes up, you're in my Facebook message as the people that are quickly accessible. Yeah,
I know what you mean. I'm the same.
Yeah, no, I mean, I talk to, like I said, I have no problems. I'll speak to everybody, but I do have a really good core of people right now, 4 or 5 people that as soon as I open up my messenger, those are the folks that are kind of at the top that I just are tending to look at what they have to say first, and you're actually right up there. So
we just have to keep chipping away, as I say. We just keep chipping away, collect as much of the data as we can. And we throw lots of it out because it's, we work out what it is, but it's that anomaly, that core little bit of an anomaly at the end that then we can say, right, we can't explain this.
No, and it's so important, like you said, because unfortunately we all as humans think that we're here for a prolonged period of time, and things unfortunately happen. Like, I don't know if you ever heard of Linda Godfrey. But
I do.
She was pretty much like the godmother of the whole Dogman thing. And she unfortunately is no longer with us, but she documented everything into books and blogs. So people like you and I are still able to access that stuff, and we're still able to read it. We're still able to document it. And same thing with me. I would like to think I'm kicking around for another 60, 70 years, but hey, if something does unfortunately happen, well, I've put pretty much all my research, or that's the final goal, out there, so that say something does happen, well, you have access to the things that I've done, and it's still not lost. It's able to be built off of.
It is. I mean, we've just lost Scott Carpenter. So
Yep. And JC Johnson, unfortunately.
all of that work hadn't been documented.
Yeah. Yep. Jan Thompson, Martin Groves, unfortunately, has been having some health issues. I mean, Johnny Henderson. Yeah, no. So there's, like I said, there's just unfortunately a ton of people. It's so good to really be able to interact with these people before things happen. The whole LBL thing, Jody Cook actually was able to speak to Jan Thompson, was able to speak to the police officers that were involved there. So you now have somebody that was face to face with somebody, but a lot of people don't understand. They're like, well, where are the pictures of Jan? We're talking about 1982, man. This isn't really like a selfie type time error. I mean, yeah, if you're a criminal, you might have an easily accessible image.
That is very true. I work with a lot of TV companies, and I'm working with one at the moment, and they want to cover the story of when I was 15. Now, my family were poor. I grew up in a mill town.
Yep.
I said to her, I don't even know if my family's got photographs of me at that age. And I think I was able to find like one when I was about 3, one when I was in my early teens.
Exactly.
Probably because I was going to school and I had my uniform.
Well, yeah, because it's in school. Exactly. Now, this day and age, we have pictures like out the galore. Everyone goes to your Facebook. You see who you are. That's the age we're in. But like I said back then, that's not how it was. So when you Google to try to see who Jan Thompson is, you're not going to find any images of her because she lived down in Kentucky and Tennessee in the 80s, had no concern about being famous, or there was no things about Instagram or Facebook.
Yeah, you can't plan for it.
Yes.
You can't think, right, well, in 20 years' time, I'm going to be famous. I better get some really good selfies now.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, now, sure, like we have image. Oh, yeah, look at it. This is when I was like 11 teen. Yeah, back then, it's just not how it was. She's a real person. Her date of birth, her certificates are there. Her grandfather was a sheriff. You can see the trail. She's real. You just don't have the image in front of her like you do with you and I or Jody Cook, where you put the face to it because it was a different time. But that doesn't discredit any of those people whatsoever. If anything, they were the very first people in that area. And at that time frame, locals don't want that type of stuff getting out. Still to this day, if you and I went down to some of these areas and started trying to ask people about Dogman and they don't know who we are, and they see that I was a city slicker or something and I dress like this, they're not necessarily going to want to talk to you because they're going to think that you're trying to make a debacle of them, or you're just trying to make some sort of revenue off of real traumas that happen to people.
Take advantage of them in some way.
Yeah.
That's what they think. But it's her story to tell. At the end of the day,
yes,
her story to do with as she wishes.
Exactly. And that's why it was so imperative to get that, like, to speak to her and have that documented, because now, unfortunately, I don't know how familiarized with it, and I know you got to go pretty soon, but there's this gentleman named Roger that came out a few years ago that claimed he survived the whole LBL thing. I'm not here to, like I said, diss anybody, or I just have a lot of holes in his story compared to things that I've been told over the years from like people I know that spoke to Bart Nunley and all these other individuals, that the story's 100% always almost been the same, except for there was a boy and there might have been 3 family members, just the mother, the father, and the daughter. But over time, there's been the boy. Okay. But besides that, it's all been the same story. But when Roger came out, he said that the Dogman had been shot in the tree. He hid underneath the RV, and that the animals didn't family in a violent way, which doesn't really make any sense whatsoever, because everyone from Jan's story and the deputy said it looked worse than any sort of horror movie, that they were visually shaken. The door was ripped off by something extremely strong. And also Roger said that when they killed the woman, just kind of laid her down. Any sort of interaction or encounter that I've ever read from, whether it's animals or people, they're not just going to lay you down and put this nice little covering on you. They're going to rip you to pieces, which is what would make sense with the part of Jan and the other deputies that saw what had gone on. So also, again, too, if Roger had really been there, in my opinion only, why did he use 3 different aliases before he became Roger to talk about the topic? And also, he, again, has never put a face to who he is. You hear his voice, but he was supposed to have done a documentary 3 years ago, he said he was, and it has yet to kind of come out. So things, again, I'm not here to call anyone a liar.
I get it. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't know the man, but there's just so many holes in the story that someone like me, unfortunately, I can't piece them together, And from the other research I have, it just doesn't add up. So
You see, I mean, that's just it, isn't it? And plus, we're on different. I'm in England. You're over there in America.
yes.
I will be honest. I don't really know the case at all. All I know is that a family were attacked by Dogman in America at Land Between the Lakes. That's as much as I know on the subject. You see.
Well, how about this? When you read my book, there you'll get to. I'd like to think. I mean, you seem like a pretty educated individual, but I would like to think after reading that hopefully I can teach you some stuff that.
I will. Yeah. My grandmother taught me a very long time ago, Kenna, that knowledge costs nothing. So you should carry it with your own.
Oh, yes, take it when people are willing to help you learn and stuff. So yeah, no, I've made it where you can look through the regions like Europe, the Northeast, the Southwest. So on the map, the United States, everything falls in there. But yeah, no, I have a whole section of the Land Between the Lakes covering Kentucky and Tennessee. I think once you're able to read through that, I have a ton of stuff from Jan and things. I think you'll understand a little bit more as to why.
I cannot wait. I love a good read. There's a storm going on out there. I'm off for the weekend. I know exactly what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, no, I will get it over to you, like I said, as soon as possible. I have some more stuff to actually add in there tonight, and I'm going to be working on the other podcast, and then I'm going to be getting yours up on my page and stuff. But I'm actually kind of coming to the point where I am actually getting a little caught up. The last month or so, I've been up pretty much like 4 or 5 in the morning, just grinding because I don't know. I just had so much knowledge in my head that I
don't get it down. I know.
Yeah, I didn't realize how far I was down the rabbit hole until every time I moved some dirt, there was more stuff coming.
Well, that's how it's fluid. Your research is fluid. It's never sit still and say, right, I know everything now, because that's what researchers do.
That's foolish. What is that? What's that whole saying? Only a fool's positive, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So cool.
Oh, I will definitely be getting you back on for part 2. I'm going to ask people if they've got any questions for you. Thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Thank you so much. And like I said, anything I can do to help you, and in return, like I said, whether it's just, anything you need help with, man, spreading knowledge. If you need images, like I said, cleaned up, anything I can do to help, you've been kind, and you're reaching out to try to help with the investigation and stuff. So it's only good to be loyal back. Consider you a friend, and you are a very good individual and a good researcher. So I definitely would like to keep on collaborating and see what we can do for sure.
I think so too. So going forward, you'll be hearing more from me and Kenny, no doubt. So excellent. For everyone that's tuned in this week, thank you very much. I really appreciate your support. Please go and check out my Patreon or my YouTube memberships. I'm going to add links to all of Kenny's things in the description below. You can click on them and go over there. If you've got any questions, you want to reach out to him, I shall make sure that you can get hold of him.
Yeah, my email too is right on my YouTube as well. So if anyone does want to contact me like that, it's right there, and I will definitely get back to them for sure.
And I shall add that in. So at the same time, same day next week. Good night, everyone.
Thank you for everyone who stopped by Star Fox Radio tonight for this episode of Midnight Lycanthropy with myself and BBR Investigations. If you do enjoy my content, please like, subscribe, and share it. Feed the algorithm. And yes, Lilith will be back soon.